Hello, welcome to the Cracks in the Ice webinar series. It's absolutely fantastic to have you all with us today. My name is Louise Birrell and I'll be the moderator of the webinar session today. The session is a second in a series of webinars run by the Cracks in the Ice team, and I'm the project coordinator here of the Cracks in the Ice project. So Cracks in the Ice is an online toolkit focused on crystal methamphetamine, or the drug ice, and it aims to provide trusted and evidence-based information for the Australian community about the drug ice, and it's funded by the Australian Government Department of Health. So in a moment I'll introduce our speaker for today, but I'd like to just draw your attention to the ability to comment and ask any questions as we're going through the webinar, which we'll then get to at the end of the session and have a bit of a question and answer session. So please, if you think of anything as we're listening to Francis give the presentation, type that in the question box and send that through to me, and we'll then have a chance to chat about that a bit later. So it's now my absolute pleasure to introduce today Associate Professor Francis Kay-Lambkin. Francis is an NHMRC Research Fellow at the University of Newcastle and the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre. She's also the Director of the Translation Stream at the NHMRC Centre of Research Excellence in Mental Health and Substance Use. And Francis is a registered clinical psychologist with over 15 years of experience working in clinical research capacity with people experiencing both drug and alcohol and mental health problems. She has a specific interest in the comorbidity of these problems and leads an internationally recognised program of research focusing on the integration and development of technology into psychological treatments for major public health and clinical problems. She was also involved in the development of the Cracks in the Ice online toolkit, and we're really lucky to have her with us today to talk to how we can better support families and friends who have a loved one using crystal methamphetamine. So it's my absolute pleasure now to hand over to Francis, who will take us through the rest of the presentation, and we'll then come back together for a question and answer session at the end. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you so much, Louise, and thank you to everybody who's joining into our webinar today. I think it's such a great turnout and really highlights to me just how important it is to be working in this area, not only helping to assist people who are using crystal methamphetamine, but also the network of people who are supporting them and who are around them. And I'm pretty passionate about this area. I hope I'll communicate that to you as we go through. So thank you very much for having me. I'd just like to quickly declare a few financial conflicts, none of which particularly impact on the work I'm talking about today. Just to say, though, that the program development and the workforce development components of the work I'll talk about today are supported by a contract with the Australian Government Department of Health. So we're all here today, firstly, I think, because we are interested and probably quite concerned about the high use of crystal methamphetamine, or ice, in our Australian community. And here is a really powerful graphic, I think, taken directly from our Cracks in the Ice online toolkit that demonstrates just how common it is in today's society. So a recent survey of Australians who are aged 14 years and over revealed that 1.4% have used meth in the past 12 months, and amongst those who used in the last month or so, over half are using crystal methamphetamine, which is a really powerful and potent form of the drug. And of course, again, as testament to everybody joining in today, the impacts of crystal meth extend far beyond the individual user themselves and include their prospects and functionality in lots of areas of their lives, the community who exists around them, and particularly relevant to today's discussion, the family and friends who are there to help support them and try to get them to access help and stop using, I guess, as well. And this was also really strongly brought out by the Nationalised Task Force Consultation, the report of which was published back in 2015 in response to our growing concerns about ice and crystal meth, where the report clearly highlighted that the first priority must be supporting families workers and communities to better respond to people affected by ice. So in that statement, it implies that these kind of efforts need to be focused on the person using ice directly. But what we want to talk about a bit more today is that, and in addition, helping strengthen and build up the people around those who are supporting people using ice so that they too can provide effective support and also look after their own health and well-being over the short and long term. And so we were funded by the Commonwealth Department of Health, as I mentioned earlier, to embark on a big consultation process and come out at the end with a program of support for people who are in the networks around people using crystal methamphetamine. So we started, like most good researchers tend to do, and have a look at what's been done before. So our first step here was to conduct a systematic review of the literature where we hoped to identify effective evidence-based interventions for families and other caregivers of people who are using meth and crystal meth in particular. So people are particularly interested in the approach we took with this systematic review. There's a site, it's actually a really good site, called Prospero. We registered our review and our search terms and our strategy on the Prospero database, and there's the registration number there if you'd like to look up specifically what we did and how we went about this particular review. But particularly we were interested in focusing on AFFMs is our acronym, but affected friends and family members, and by that we mean families, we mean significant others, partners, siblings, friends and other caregivers. And we're looking across a range of substances, not just crystal meth or methamphetamine, because we felt that potentially a lot of work has already been done in this area, more broadly than it has been in crystal meth specifically, and that we might be able to bring some messages over from other substances of use and what's helped affected friends and family members in those contexts to the specific case of methamphetamine. And also we're particularly interested in psychosocial interventions. So psychological, social therapies, support, counselling, self-help treatments, bibliotherapy, support groups and those sorts of things, with a specific focus on helping the family member or friend themselves better deal with the situations and the stresses that they're encountering in their caregiving role, as opposed to building up the resources of the family member or friend to better help the person who's using crystal meth. Although we kind of admit that we understand that by being stronger and being able to cope better with what life throws you, you're better able to support others. So what we're particularly interested in, what we'll talk about today, is those interventions that are directly for the family member or friend, designed to help them and help the distress that they are experiencing. So what did we find? Well, as suspected, and where there has been quite a bit done across the spectrum of other substances. So I've got a few of them listed here in case you're interested. So we identified the BEST program, which is a drug education program providing family members and friends with information about different sorts of drugs and the impact they can have on a user. We found programs that tried to build coping skills, help family members and friends do some self-evaluation and goal setting around what they would like to get out of their lives, helping them build self-esteem, relationship and communication type skills. We found programs called Stepping Stones, which again incorporated information sessions and developing a feeling or a perspective of hope and enjoyment regardless of what is happening in the substance user's life directly. We identified the Family and Friends program, which provides, again, lots of education and information about drug use and how substance abuse particularly and broadly affects family members. And also we found one web-based training program, which was coping skills-based, called stopspinningmywheels.org, and was combined with a 24-hour coaching type of support strategy for women whose partners have an alcohol use disorder. And again, the key techniques in there were not only that it was self-directed, but increasing the resources that you have available to you to help cope with the skills associated with supporting someone with an alcohol use disorder. Other programs that we also identified included one by Lee et al. Back in 2014, which focused on how to overcome and navigate family challenges. There was a lot of family perspectives and relationship dynamics in the interventions that we identified. Again, some more information provision and coping skills type training. A lot of coaching and training type courses to help the family member and friend better deal with and better communicate with the substance user in their lives. And also one recent program called MPACT, which is a group therapy that taught specifically for parents and children to encourage communication and relationships between the substance user and either their child who's a substance user or the children of parents who are substance users. And overwhelmingly, although there's not a lot of randomised controlled trial and large trial evidence that these programs are effective, but through the qualitative and very small-scale evaluation trials that evaluated all these programs, the big message was that, yes, it is possible to engage and work with family members and friends to try to focus on their own health and well-being, and also at the same time improve their health and well-being by improving their ability to cope and manage negative emotions and improve their relationships and communication skills. So that's good. It reinforces what we think works and what we think we know. And certainly particular techniques came out of that literature review, such as motivational interviewing, cognitive behaviour therapy, and those sorts of key treatment techniques. But one particular method emerged as really for us the treatment or the support package of choice from all of the literature that we were able to identify through the systematic review. And that's what's called the 5-step method. Now, this has been evaluated comprehensively across a number of randomised controlled trials and evaluation programs in services, and essentially can help people from a range of counselling and health service provision backgrounds and lay people as well to work through a series of 5 steps to, again, help the family member or friend focus on the things that are happening in their lives and build some resources and get some help that can help them manage those challenges a bit better. So again, it's focused on the family members' responses, the family members' levels of stress and distress, and trying to work out better ways to support that person directly. So the 5 key steps in the 5-step method are, first of all, very importantly, listening to the family member or friend and learning about what they see as being the particular issue or concern for them. Providing advice and information, again, as we saw in other sorts of programs. Helping them to explore responses and coping mechanisms, and doing this very non-judgmentally. So helping them to identify what's working well for them in terms of the way they're responding and coping, or the way they might have responded or coped in the past with other sorts of stresses, and look for alternative ways to get around issues that aren't working so well for them in their lives. To really help the family member identify the social supports that are around them in their lives at the moment, or that used to be there and now are not, potentially for reasons related to their focus on their substance using loved one, and to identify what sorts of social supports they might need at different times in their experience in their lives. And then also clarifying whether further help might be needed. And so by working through these 5 steps in sequence, and it might be all in one session, it might be over several weeks, the 5-step method has demonstrated improvements in each of these key domains, so people are able to develop and access and mobilise their own resources in each of these 5 domains. And this has a really significant effect on their distress and their ability to cope and their perceptions and hopefulness for the future. And so we really honed in on the 5-step method as not only being one of the programs with the most evidence associated with it, but really incorporating across the range of other literature and programs that have gone before it, incorporating the main tenets of all of them, and also demonstrating that we can get good improvement if we use these 5 steps with affected family members and friends. Interestingly, though, none of the research that we were able to identify had been applied or used in groups who were supporting people using crystal meth or ice. So we weren't able to identify anything in the literature specifically to support family and friends of people using ice. But we felt pretty confident that we looked at other sorts of drugs like stimulant drugs and cocaine. We looked at alcohol, where there's been the most work done, and other sorts of illicit drugs. And we felt strongly that there were consistencies across the type of drug that people were involved in or concerned about, and so that the same key principles that apply across each of those drug types could very well apply to the specific case of crystal methamphetamine. And so we didn't want to just throw everything out because it hadn't been evaluated in the crystal meth field at all. But certainly we weren't confident going in and automatically recommending that we use, for example, the 5-step method in this context without checking how and why that might occur. And so to move that forward and to answer that question of but how can we do this, we embarked on another 2 main methodologies. And this is one of the things I love the most about this whole project so far, is that we've taken what I think is a real participatory approach to the development of the package that I'll tell you about in a little while, and really tried to not only incorporate the evidence from the literature and the evidence from our clinical knowledge and intuition about what works, but really engage family members and friends of people who are using crystal meth to get them to help us develop the type of package that they are going to want to support and that meets their needs. So we sometimes take a bit longer to catch on to the idea that people do sometimes and quite often know what helps them the best, but this has really given us an opportunity to focus in on this for a really neglected and very, very needy group. So I really hope we're doing them justice. So to that end, we tried to think about how we could access affected family members and friends of people using crystal methamphetamine. And in a previous version, a previous research project where we developed up a program specifically for users of crystal meth, we had a fair bit of success recruiting people via Facebook. And it's a simple advertisement on Facebook where people click through and told us their story of their experience of using crystal meth. And we were so successful that I think we had something like 1,000 people respond to those types of advertisements in a very, very short period of time, in about a month or 2 months' time. So we thought, and in that we also heard from affected family members and friends. And so we thought we would use that methodology again, and certainly the medium of the internet and technology to help encourage those family members and friends to tell us their story. So to really be not too prescriptive about what we wanted to hear from them in the beginning, but just give them the opportunity to really offload the backlog of emotions and experiences that we were certain they were bringing with them. We also then, after we asked them to tell their story, asked them to complete the family member questionnaire, the short form, the FMQ, which is a scale that was developed by the people, the Vellemans, who developed the 5-step method that I spoke about earlier, and can really help to hone in on the various areas of a person's life, of a family member or friend's life, that is not going so well, and identify some areas in which we might be able to intervene. And so down there at the bottom of the page there you can see the reference for the 2 references for the scale for the family member questionnaire, which is in the public domain, and I think is a really helpful clinical tool as well as research tool to track outcomes over time as well. So Facebook, there's our Facebook ad. It was very, very simple. We recycled the image that I showed you earlier and merely encouraged people to click on the link and go through this process. So interestingly, we had about 300 people over a 1-month period click on the link and start the survey, but we only had 39 people complete the survey in its entirety. Of those, 31 were female. They were around 44 years of age, and for the most part were mothers with a daughter or a son who was using crystal meth. We also had partners, we had siblings talk to us, and the remainder were other relatives or friends. But interestingly, no fathers completed the survey. So that's not to say that fathers aren't concerned and don't need support. They absolutely do. It's just probably that our Facebook ad didn't appeal to them, or the method of assessing them didn't necessarily appeal to them. And the other interesting reflection, again, if you're working in the area, this won't be a revelation to you, but crystal meth didn't always just affect one person's family member or friend in a network. So 10 of our 39 respondents said to us that there was more than one family member or friend who they were caring for or looking after who was using crystal meth. So certainly that added to the complexity and the distress that people were trying to deal with. From the 39 who completed the survey for us online, those open-ended questions and the FMQ, we asked everybody to provide their contact details, their name and their email address or a phone number particularly, and to volunteer at the end of that process to talk to us on the phone a bit more intensively. And so 17 people did that, so just under half. And so 9 of those were mums, and the rest were a combination of siblings. There was a fiance, a husband, a brother, a friend, a flatmate, and an in-law. And these interviews were quite intensive and ranged from about 60 minutes to 90 minutes in length, and enabled us to really ask some much more in-depth questions about coping, about support needs, and about program needs and delivery of family members and friends who were supporting someone using crystal methamphetamine. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit now about what family members and friends told us arising from those quantitative and qualitative surveys and interviews that we've just finished conducting. So what did we find? Well, not surprisingly, there were lots of concerns raised about the person in their lives' ice use. And certainly the advice from the Vellemans, who we are now collaborating with on this project, gave us that same advice, and that is this, that it's really important before we try to ask a family member or a friend to focus on themselves, they really need to tell us about the person in their life that they're concerned about first. And so that's a great clinical tip. I'm sure you're doing it already, but also for us in terms of encouraging people to talk with us about their whole experience. They really, part of their story was really telling us about the person they're concerned about in their lives. And so what you see here on the right, I think it's on your screen, I'm not sure if we're mirror imaged or not, is what we call a word cloud. So it looks like it's just a whole heap of words arranged in a bit of a cloud formation, if you can see it there. But actually the size of the word indicates the number of times that word was used by our family members and friends. So the larger the font, the more times that particular word was used. So the size does have a little bit of meaning. And you can see there that there's it's chaotic, it's stressful, it's unpredictable. Our interviewees were really talking about the marked changes in their own lives as a result of supporting somebody else and somebody they care about particularly who is using crystal methamphetamine. There were lots of relationship breakdowns, changes and challenges in managing the family structure, work and financial type distress, and the public health campaigns related to methamphetamine or anything to go by. They also supported what the family members and friends were telling us, and that there was a lot of exposure to verbal abuse, to aggression, and to violence on the part of the person using ice in their lives. But there also was a lot of care, a lot of concern, and a lot of desperation to help the person in their lives who was using crystal meth. And one of the things that we found is when we got to the point of talking with people on a telephone more intensively, and maybe this explains why we had such a large number start our online survey yet not finish, is that so only 39 of our 300 odd completed the full survey, and several of our interviews had to be, our phone interviews had to be stopped in the middle of the interview, somewhat pretty quickly and without much warning, and then continue to a later stage. And I think upon reflection that those kinds of things just highlight the difficulties that our family members and friends are facing in support of someone who is using crystal meth, and that real unpredictability and that erratic type behaviour that you can see here reflected in some of the key quotes that family members and friends gave us around the ice use, and that really this chaotic and unpredictable nature of supporting someone in this area really indicates the need for any intervention or support program that we develop to be very flexible and responsive to this quite chaotic environment. So potentially sitting down and having an hour-long conversation with someone in their home or on the phone is not going to work, particularly if someone is still in the middle of supporting someone who's still actively using. People had various understandings of what they thought the real problem was for the person in their life using crystal meth, and very few of our respondents felt that people were using ice just because they liked the feeling or just because they wanted to. And that's really interesting because it contrasts with what people who are actually using crystal meth tell us. So they'll say they like the feeling, they like to get high, they like to go all night and be super productive and on the go. And it's really those kind of, be more socials, it's really those kind of positive effects that the people who are using crystal meth tell us they're using the drug for. But interestingly, the family members and friends didn't really talk about those positive things too much, and talked about more the underlying problems that they thought were driving the use of crystal meth as the outcome for a person. So things like a lack of self-worth from not being able to secure a job, or and for ongoing health issues. Family members and friends felt their loved one had a real lack of sense of belonging anywhere and to anyone. That there were a lot of psychological reasons underlying their ice use, which really needed to be managed if they had any hope of reducing or ceasing their use. Some of the family and friends did endorse that their loved one really did genuinely believe that it helped them do the things in their life they wanted to do, but also that there was a general a real challenge for people who were using ice to really accept what life was throwing at them, and that the ice use was kind of a mask or a coping mechanism for these underlying issues. And I think if we, as clinicians, are thinking about crystal meth use, we don't just focus on the behaviour, it's these other reasons that we're thinking about as well, trying to identify and trying to understand and help a person navigate without using. So after we spoke to people about what life is like for their loved one who's using crystal meth, we then very gently tried to bring the focus back onto the individual affected family member or friend themselves. And again, we've got a word cloud with the bigger words being the most endorsed words by the people who answered both our online surveys and our phone-based interviews. And really there was a real sense of constantly feeling like they weren't doing enough, saying things like a living hell for every member of the family, and a real sense of stigma and isolation experienced by the family member and friend in trying to get the mental health or the drug and alcohol system to help their loved one, or even accessing their own social supports and networks for very, very basic and practical help. And certainly I think the way that ice has been portrayed in the media doesn't help this stigma and this isolation. So we think we need to be thinking very carefully about how we portray ice use and other drug use in the media, because this is, I think, some of the fallout that we're seeing here. Affected family members and friends who completed our online surveys, this is part of the FMQ, the family member questionnaire, and they really did endorse a lot of physical symptoms that also interfered with their ability to support or care for the person in their life who was using crystal meth. And so what you've got here is a figure that shows you how much in the last 3 months our family members and friends endorsed experiencing some of these types of symptoms. So they've got things like worrying, irritability, physical weaknesses in their limbs, sleep disturbance and intrusive thoughts, and they really had disruptive sleep and were really still struggling with these range of physical and emotional symptoms in themselves at the same time as they were dealing with whatever was happening with their loved one in their lives who was using crystal meth. And so you can imagine it's painting quite the picture if the person's not able to get a good sleep and worrying and irritable all the time, that their ability to think clearly and to help navigate through a complex treatment system for their loved one gets all that much harder. And here with this quote here, we really see the real struggle for family members and friends. And it's one that you may think is quite obvious, but one that I failed to appreciate until our participant here really elucidated it. And there's a very real fear that if the family member or friend takes their eyes off the person who's using ice, then they'll be responsible for that person then going and using. Now, I'm a mum with a couple of young kids, and I really do understand this kind of personal accountability for my kids' behaviours and choices and those sorts of things. So I really identify with this comment, although that I'm not in this context of supporting a child who is using crystal methamphetamine. But I think it demonstrates why family members and friends might not be able to focus on themselves or all those physical symptoms that they might be experiencing, or what they might be going through to get through these very stressful times, because they really are frightened that if they take their eyes off the person in their lives who's using them, that will make them use more, or they'll turn to their friends and their networks using ice. And so I think we really need to be mindful of that, and that I guess it's a real value of what they believe is driving the person's use, or they believe their role is as the support person of someone using ice, and we are trying to think about how best to support them. It really opened my eyes, this particular comment. We also asked family members and friends whether they thought their situation could be improved. And again, as you can see from the word cloud, a big yes. There was a lot of support there. There's a lot of can and will and needs and wants and improvements and ability kind of comments coming out in getting people to reflect on whether they think their situation could be improved. But they really didn't know how to action these kinds of hopes and this willfulness. So people we spoke to had years of trying to find answers, as exemplified in these quotes here. And they still do hold out a little bit of hope, but the shame and the embarrassment and the loneliness of the journey is really preying on their minds and really needs to be addressed again in any sort of intervention. And several of our respondents said to us that they thought they could be much more effective at helping the other person in their lives if they got some training themselves in how to do so. But again, it was, focused on helping get the person into treatment rather than necessarily strengthening themselves to be able to better deal with the situations that pop up in their lives. So when we asked them that question, did they think that they could be helped in this situation, they, upon reflection, could think about some things that would have been nice or that might have actually eased the journey through. So things like support groups were identified as being important. Knowing where family members and friends who are using crystal meth could go for help was very, very important. Being able to understand their support services or their support networks and who was helpful or unhelpful in that particular network, rather than having to find out by trial and error who was a supportive person and who wasn't a supportive person. They really wanted to hear about case studies, so particularly success stories where someone has been able to support a person successfully who's been using crystal methamphetamine. And I guess in that particular example, the marker of success was to get the person into treatment and for the person to recover. And I think that speaks to this idea of holding out hope and remaining hopeful that it's not all over for their loved one in their lives. People also wanted to help deal with stress, anxiety, a lot of grief and depression and mood-related issues in themselves, again to help them be a better carer for the other person. Emotional support and very practical and financial support would have also been helpful for people. And also people mentioned that they thought online support services and easy to access support services would be good, not only to maintain anonymity but also to and reduce stigma in that way, but also so that support can be there at any time of the day or night when we as real life clinicians and support people might not be able to. And certainly the affected family members and friends that we spoke with and who we surveyed online had been doing as good a job as they possibly could to cope with a very, very stressful situation that they found themselves in. So here again is some questions from the FMQ, the Family Member Questionnaire, that tells us how our survey respondents have attempted to cope with having a family member or friend who's using crystal methamphetamine. So there was a real focus on getting the person who's using ice into treatment, but that was often unsuccessful and then created more stress for the family and friends around them who had to try to pick up the pieces, if you like. There was a real absence of anything that they had accessed previously for family members and friends, particularly of people using crystal meth. They found lots out there to help carers in general, lots in the Alzheimer's space, a little in the mental health space, but nothing specifically for crystal meth, which they all felt was quite unique and quite overwhelming in slightly different ways from other sorts of drugs or from all of those other caring programs that are there. Now, consistent with what the Velleman's 5-step method of support that I mentioned way back in the beginning of this webinar, the people who we spoke to in the interviews suggested that they were coping in 3 particular domains. So they used what the Vellemans call engaged responding. So that is trying to get involved in changing someone else's use of ice. So strategies that you can see here on the graph, like sitting down and talking frankly with the person about what they can do, making expectations clear that what he or she could do to contribute to the family, and those sorts of things are really about this idea of engaged responding. So everything that you can do as a family member or a friend to try to get the person using ice to engage in treatment. The other sort of coping strategy that our family members and friends who talked with us identified was this idea of tolerating. So putting up with someone else's use of ice for fear of, not inflaming the problems, not leading to an exacerbation in use or a blow up in violence or arguments and so forth. So just basically getting on with things or acting as if they weren't there, covering up or taking the blame for things and so forth. And as you can see, our family members and friends adopted those sorts of strategies as well. And then the final area of coping that family members and friends tended to use in our sample was what's called withdrawal responding. So really trying to distance themselves from someone else's drug use. So maybe pursuing their own interests, making it clear you won't cover up for the person who's using, and those sorts of strategies are things that our family members and friends told us they were using from time to time. And so the nature of the relationship between our family member or friend and the ice user was particularly important. So mothers in particular in our sample were less likely to use withdrawal responding, so that is trying to distance themselves from the person using ice, than any other member of the family or the friend network. And, again, I guess being a mother myself, I can really relate to that style of to not withdrawing completely. And I think what the overwhelming message is and this is what I like about the 5-step model as well, is that we don't talk to family members and friends about what's the best way to cope or what's the right way of coping or the wrong way of coping. Rather, we just sit them down and we talk with them about how they cope currently and whether they've thought of additional ways to cope or whether that style of coping is helping them or not. But certainly our affected family members and friends had also tried a range of different communication strategies to try to talk to the person in their lives who's using ice and really try to get them to understand the impact that using ice was having on them directly, but also on the family members and friends in their network. But unfortunately, a lot of these communication strategies were to no avail. So they didn't stop the person in their lives from using ice. In trying to press the issue with our family members and friends and asking them to consider how they've attempted to cope with having a loved one in their lives who's using crystal meth, our sample really acknowledged the importance of trying to keep themselves stable, and that's evidenced really by this quote here. So they felt that they needed to keep themselves stable and well in order to benefit the other people in their lives. So not just their loved one who's using crystal meth, but everybody else who's depending upon them in their network. But what's interesting about that, and so this is positive because we can kind of build on this idea that they need to be stable and well and develop strategies to help them maintain that stability and well-being, which is great. But despite acknowledging that this was really, really important, they really hadn't had the time or the thinking space or even the ability in some instances to do anything to increase or improve their stability or well-being. And so they hadn't done things like taking time off or giving themselves treats or taking any kind of respite or pursuing their own interests at all, which might be the typical things that we would encourage as clinicians for people to do to help them to cope better with stress. But having that acknowledgement in their thinking that their stability is important in the context of their caring or their support role is a really good start. In terms of accessing both friends and relations in their social network or the health professionals who they know are available, and sort of understanding that a big part of being able to be a good support person is to be stable and well yourselves. As I mentioned, most of our sample really hadn't spoken to family and other friends or relations or even health professionals in their whole experience or journey of supporting someone who is using crystal methamphetamine. And you can see some of that reflected here again in some of the questions I've taken from the FMQ or the Family Member Questionnaire. So as you can see here, this is just related to the past 3 months, our sample only sometimes found that members of their social network listened to them talk about their feelings. They only sometimes really felt that their friends and relatives had been there for them. And only once or twice felt that their friends or their relations had really listened to them and genuinely about their genuine concerns about the ICE user in their lives. And I think, again, reflecting on what we heard from people in our phone-based interviews, often friends and relations were kind of doing that distancing or that withdrawal style of coping and support and really focusing on the crystal meth behaviours that the loved one in the person's lives were exhibiting, rather than trying to be there and understand some of those underlying factors that might have resulted or led to the use. And again, that's really important to remember. Really critically, though, a significant proportion of our survey respondents had never confided in a health or a social care worker about their situation. They felt that health professionals hadn't really made themselves available to affected family members and friends, and had never actually given the family member or friend any information about drinking or drug taking or crystal meth use or anything like that. And I think that doesn't speak to speak negatively to our health or social care workforce at all, but rather speaks to the policies and the procedures associated with our mental health and drug and alcohol services particularly, which quite necessarily are often focused entirely around the person who's using directly. But what we also want to try to do through this project and through webinars like this one is to try to influence policy and service philosophies to expand that focus to family members and friends who are there when we as clinicians can't be, and supporting people in their lives using crystal methamphetamine. And generally as a group, I think our interviewees and our survey respondents kind of minimised the support they needed and really suggested that whatever resources were available should be directed towards people using ICE. However, when we were able to ask them specifically about themselves and in the context of acknowledging that being stable and well made them a better support person for their loved one, they really endorsed the idea that getting emotional, practical and financial support would be very, very helpful. The majority suggested that having access to some kind of 24-hour support programs or crisis lines would be really helpful. But they also really, their experience was that obtaining emotional support was really, really difficult. So discussions about the impact of the person's drug use were really only restricted to a very few people, if any, in the family member or friends network. And this was really due to stigma, to conflicting beliefs about how things should be managed, and overwhelmingly a fear of burning out other friends and family with the burdens and the challenges that they are facing in this ongoing supporting role. They really expressed uncertainty about the right way to handle situations involving their loved one using ICE, but what was coming out of what they were saying to us is that they wanted to still be acting in accordance with their values. So they felt that even though their son or their daughter, in the example of parents, or their husband or wife or partner, in the case of partners, they really had strong values and core beliefs about what it meant to be a good parent or a good partner or a good friend, and that they needed to continue to act in accordance with what those values were, but it was really hard to do so in the context of crystal meth use, which is quite an ongoing and chaotic kind of supporting role, and that other people in their networks had real trouble understanding why they were continuing to offer that kind of help. So there was this real battle with the core beliefs and values that a person had about what it meant for them to be a parent or a partner, and how difficult it was to not only satisfy their social support networks in pursuit of that value, but also be an effective parent or partner or support person for their loved one in their lives. So it's a real dilemma. And so for us, in thinking about what we might then do to better support affected family members and friends in this situation, is that we really need to be mindful of the complexity of the dynamics and the relationships that people are in, and we need to be supportive of their values as a mother, as a father, as a sibling, as a relative or a friend, and help them to continue to act in accordance with those values, but at the same time develop strategies that can help them take a step back from feeling like they're responsible, and they're always responsible for the outcomes associated with the person using crystal meth. In terms of where and how and when they would like to receive support if it was available, again, they endorsed a range of options. The most commonly endorsed modality was online, followed by telephone, and then in person. And I think in person is great, and it's really, really important. But I think this online and telephone kind of modality speaks to the anonymity I think that people would like to maintain when seeking support in this domain, and also the availability 24/7 of those kinds of supports, in contrast to in-person and traditional services. So charged with the task of pulling together a support program for family and friends and family members and friends of people using crystal methamphetamine, I mean, what do we do with all of this information? We've identified a lot of challenges. We've identified a lot of things that might work and might not work, and how do we go from here? Well, the first step again came out for us in our consultation, as it did with the systematic review, that information is critical. So most of the people we spoke with and who completed our survey said that there is actually a lot of information on the internet, but there's a real lack of information about how to deal with common problems and the challenges that they face as affected family members and friends specifically. So things like decisions about whether or not to call the police, how to manage courts and legal systems, and how to respond and communicate with a person using ice when they're intoxicated, and when might be a good time or a not so good time to do so. And so whilst there are lots of information websites out there, having a one-stop shop where people can go to and get some of this specific family member and friend type advice is a real gap in the literature. Gap in the service provision in the internet, and this was regardless of how educated or together people reported themselves feeling. So this bottom quote is, I'm a fairly educated person, and I felt very confused about the whole system. It's not easy to navigate at all. I'm sure we've all heard similar kinds of statements coming from people we speak with. One of the interviewees had even gone to and undertook a diploma in community services, just so that she could gain some information about what services might have been available to her son. And she said that getting that sort of training and that sort of orientation to the services available in the sector was really, really helpful, because, as an outsider coming in, she would have had no idea how to navigate that system. And again, there was endorsement for people universally saying they wanted to access reliable, trusted information about services, both for them, for the loved one in their lives, but also for themselves. And certainly, again, the internet, phone seeking, and those sorts of non-face-to-face and 24/7 kinds of sources were going to be most helpful, they thought, to people. And so this was all going on before Cracks in the Ice was officially launched and available to the general community. And we used this kind of information to populate the information, evidence-informed information that we have on Cracks in the Ice. And so certainly in terms of being a one-stop shop, again, of trusted evidence-based information for the community, Cracks in the Ice is a really useful and important resource, not only for big communities, for schools, for health professionals, and even for individuals who are using crystal meth or thinking about using crystal meth, but from what our affected family members and friends were telling us about things like, when to call the police, courts, legal system navigation, communication skills, and how to respond to people using ice. Cracks in the Ice covers those kinds of, basic strategies, and is a really helpful resource that I can only recommend, and I'm not biased at all in doing so. The other thing that we found overwhelmingly is that having gone through these experiences as affected family members and friends makes people very, very passionate to try to put back in and to help other people not suffer as much. And so as a clinician and as a researcher and as a health professional, I can offer a range of strategies and a range of of advice and assistance, but there's something special and something really particular about hearing from a person who's been through a similar situation to the family members or friends, particularly for people using crystal methamphetamine, that seems to be critically important here. And that was a real gap in what people were telling us that they'd missed out on in their journey up until this point, but something that they themselves really felt like they wanted to continue to offer or to be available for other people out there. So there was this real altruism and a little community that's probably not so little, but a community of their own that's building that I think would be really important to access and to promote and to support to help each other. The other way of now thinking about how we can best support affected family members and friends using crystal meth, using all of this information that they've given us and that literature has told us before, is this idea of helping the affected family member or friend live with it and not in it. Now, as a professional, when I was doing my training in psychology, people gave me an analogy of, if somebody's drowning in the water, your best way of helping them is not to jump in there with them, because you can get dragged down as well. You can both be in trouble. Your best way of helping that person is to throw them something from the side of the pool so that you can help pull them out. And I guess this idea, this is a quote that one of the family members and friends gave us, is this idea of living with it, not in it, exemplifies that kind of a metaphor as well. And so that's seemed to resonate really well when we fed that back to our survey respondents and our interviewees. And it's something that we think we're going to really try to encourage in the program that we develop. So as I mentioned before, we've done a little bit of this already that's available right now on the Cracks in the Ice website. So if you go to the family and friends section of the website, you can find out some information about whether you think someone in your life is using ice or not, and the ways to determine that, how you might start a conversation with someone about those concerns, how you might want to protect yourself and others who are around someone using crystal meth, and then also what types of help are available to help the person directly. So that's already there, and I think is a really, really important addition to the website, and certainly is endorsed by what our family members and friends were telling us. But in addition to that, we'll be adding over the next 6 months or so an online support program for people, family and friends of loved ones using crystal methamphetamine that extends these kinds of ideas. So what we're going to build into this interactive and we hope very effective online intervention is a storytelling component. Because the stories, I think, of this community are largely unheard, and based on the feedback that we received from our consultations, having the opportunity to share their stories is a really important and helpful experience for themselves, but then also can potentially help others who join the community at a later stage. So including those stories and quotes from people with similar experiences will be a big feature of the program. And we'll certainly be using some of the stories with permission that people have told us about already in that consultation process in the program. Because lifestyle and relationship changes occur to a significant level, again, based on not only the evidence but what people have told us, we'll be building in some strategies to help build relationships and rebuild lifestyle-related issues to keep people healthy and stable as they possibly can, and particularly trying to take a real values-based approach to all of the advice and strategies that we offer as part of the program. So helping people hang on to the things that are most important to them and help them learn ways to do those things as best as they possibly can. And then maybe at the same time get them to consider other sorts of ways of acting in accordance with those values that might actually be more helpful to them directly as well as to the loved one in their lives using crystal methamphetamine. And also strategies like mindfulness, cognitive behaviour therapy, behavioural activation strategies and motivation strategies are going to be built into this program throughout. What we're also going to be doing is, as well as offering that online program, and certainly some of those strategies are things as clinicians we can offer, regardless of the availability of that type of an online support program. Because we were so, I guess, impressed with the evidence base and also the content of the 5-step method, we want to incorporate that in our package that we're offering to family members and friends. And so what we'll be doing over the next 12 months is trying to train willing workforces in the 5-step method and trying to integrate those 5 steps and training in those 5 steps with the provision of the online support program. So we're really interested in hearing from anyone who is in the peer workforces, lay workforces, mental health or alcohol and other drug workforces who might be willing to work with us on this particular model. So that's about it. I've just spoken a bit long about this issue that I'm just so passionate about. I really invite any questions and certainly you can continue to email me or have involvement in this project as it goes forward. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Frances. That was a wonderful presentation and some really exciting developments in this space. I know we've had a lot of interest and the Cracks in the Ice team have had a lot of questions from family and friends about how we can better support loved ones using ice, and I think you've provided some real nuggets of gold for people to take away today. So we have had some questions come through as you've been talking, which is fantastic, but if you have any others as we're chatting now, please shoot them through now. I'll start off with a question that came through which touched on the different coping styles that you talked about at the beginning of the presentation, and we've had a question asking what your view is on the tough love approach to coping and dealing with a family member who has a substance addiction. Do you have any thoughts around that strategy, Frances?
So this is going to sound a bit like a cop-out, but for me I don't think there are any bad ways of coping. Everybody's doing the best job that they can with the strategies and the resources they have available to them. What I would, and certainly tough love and kind of that withdrawal style of responding, so distancing themselves from, from the person who's using, is a very valid way of, managing and coping, and maybe in some cases encouraging the person to seek treatment. And I guess what I would ask the person to consider is, how does that work for them? Does it work well all the time? And are there other ways that you might be open to trying in the situations where you think you're going to do tough love that might have a different outcome? So I think it's a perfectly valid way of coping. It's not the only way of coping in those kinds of situations, though.
I think that's a really interesting point. Something that you brought up is not that there's one right way to do this, and every family is different, every family's members' experience is different, so that seems like a real key message here, that there's not going to be a golden bullet.
And I think that what we're trying to communicate is that there are options and there are choices, so there's not just one way of doing things that we want everybody to do. It's that, there are more than one option in a particular situation. So not to feel so kind of isolated and locked in.
Yeah, great. We had a question come in about the experience of using crystal methamphetamine in intimate relationships and in love and sex, and how often that can become so enmeshed that it makes it really difficult for someone to stop using or give up. I'm assuming if a loved one is also using ice and it's used in that context. Did you have any experience or any stories from people that you spoke with around this problem?
Yes, and I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people who are using ice we've spoken to give for using it. And I think it's a really tricky situation, and that's why the relationships issue is so important to incorporate in any kind of support program for an affected family member or friend, understanding that they might also be someone using crystal meth. And that happens in a lot of other drugs as well. Often there's a partnership that's based around use together. And so often it can be helpful for both to try to seek treatment as well, but also it's a real threat, and there's a real worry and a real fear about what will the relationship be if I stop using and he or she doesn't, and vice versa, and what's left. So there aren't any easy answers, only to say that I think it's really important that we talk about it, and certainly that relationship dynamic is something that we'll be trying to bring out and help people consider in our online program, and also that the 5-step method can teach people to work through.
Fantastic. Somebody here has asked us that, or said in their experience working with families, they've found that it can be difficult for families to really differentiate that difference between supporting their loved ones in their recovery path and then supporting perhaps their addiction and enabling their addiction. And how can we help families to better identify this difference?
I think the first step, it's actually part of the 5-step method actually, so there's a key step in there that helps people understand, I guess, the dynamics of everything that's going on. And certainly what we're building into the online program is almost, it's like a genealogy type activity where people can really start to think through, well, if I do this, what impact is it going to have on all of these other people? And is that important, or is that not important? Is that putting me closer to my values or further away from my values? So again, it's not an easy answer, but I think giving people a safe space to try to talk about those issues and how it affects them, and then giving them some additional choices that they can try and take in those kinds of situations is probably the quickest answer that I can give right now.
Fantastic. Thanks, Frances. We've had a comment here saying that residential care organisations are seeing a recent increase in methamphetamine use and people coming into their services. Would there be an opportunity to provide some more information in relation to managing young people? So I guess this ties into the point that is the resources on Cracks in the Ice or in the new support package applicable to young people, or do they have special needs?
So I'm assuming this means that a young person using crystal meth, because I think they do have special needs and they might not be as far along in their experience of using as perhaps some older people might be. And certainly different case studies and language will appeal to different age groups. And certainly I know in Cracks in the Ice that we've tried to be sensitive to that and include the types of information that might appeal to different age groups and present that information in sort of age-appropriate ways. And also through Cracks in the Ice, we have an online treatment program called Breaking the Ice. It's all about those acronyms. That is specifically designed for young people, so kind of 18 to 25-year-olds who are considering using or might have started to use or might already be using regularly crystal meth, and to think about the things that are relevant in their lives related to that use. In terms of children or young people supporting parents or older people who might be using, I think it is a very different situation because you've got lots of family dynamics going on in that situation about to do with power. So the parent versus the child, and there's a child trying to act like the parent and so forth. And again, my main message is to start that conversation with that support person, and maybe with young people they might be a bit more likely to do that online or through messaging or text messaging or so forth. Certainly I'm probably more comfortable doing so, to start that conversation about that experience. And certainly if our online consultations are anything to go by, just even providing that safe, secure space for them to answer that question, you know, in a trusted and somewhat anonymous way can be very, very helpful. So with the Breaking the Ice direct consultation with crystal meth users, we had over 1,000 young people come on and tell their stories in 1 or 2 months, and then report benefit from it. So I think there's so much that we can do, and I think one of the take-home messages is to try to create a safe and secure environment in which a person can explore some of those issues for themselves.
Yeah, fantastic. And are you aware, Francis, of this model, and I'm assuming the question is asking about the 5-step model being used in GP practices, or are there other models that GPs could use to help support family members with a loved one using crystal meth?
Yes, so I think that's a really good question, and one of the things I like about the 5-step method is that it's quite flexible. And so you can work through those 5 steps. I remember Richard Velleman saying, you know, some people have done it in 15 minutes and 20 minutes, which certainly lends itself well to primary care settings. But also, you know, specialists can deliver that kind of a support program. And again, it really, for me, is about creating that safe space to then encourage some of the conversations that affected family members and friends might want to have, and then referring out to other sorts of support services, or referring on to, you know, the online programs that we will develop and launch soon, to get that more intensive kind of support. So, for example, you know, nurse practitioners in general practices might be able to offer 5-step, you know, drug and alcohol caseworkers, peer workers could also be trained in delivering the 5-step method, and it's been evaluated and tested as effective in all of those circumstances. Now, I don't think it's been tested specifically in a GP model, but we'd love an opportunity to do so. So please let me know if you'd like to do that.
And following on from that, Francis, is there any opportunity for people today, or people that they might know of, to be involved in the development of the program or give their opinions about how this moves forward?
There absolutely is. So we would love to hear from people. You can either contact info@cracksintheice.org.au or my email directly that you can see on the screen there. I hope you can still see it. If you would like to get involved, either as a workforce to get trained in 5-step and the online program, or we've just finished our first full prototype of the online program, and we'd love to get some feedback from a whole range of people and key stakeholders on what people think, if it's meeting people's needs, if we're missing anything, and so forth. So please, please, please get in contact, and there are always opportunities to contribute to what I think is you know, really exciting and important program, and our program will only be better for your involvement. So yes, please get in contact.
Yeah, please do, and I think hopefully you can see the email on the screen. If not, it's info@cracksintheice, all one word, .org.au, and I'd encourage you all to hop on and have a look at the resources that are available now on the site, as well as subscribe for updates where we can notify you when this program's available, or if we're looking for feedback, we can send it out through that as well. So I'd like to thank Francis for her fantastic presentation today. I think we could continue talking for hours. We've had some more fabulous questions that we didn't get to, so I apologise if we didn't get to your questions, but please continue the conversation on email, and I'd encourage you to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We've got accounts up there where you can follow along for the most recent updates and subscribe to upcoming webinars. So thank you for that fantastic presentation, Francis. We look forward to hearing from you all soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.